Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something incredibly profound and, frankly, super urgent. We're looking at the 2026 Street 2 Scholar Foundation Impact Report. Now, we're dealing with a massive, absolutely heartbreaking crisis here, but the really exciting part, we're going to explore a tangible, structured pathway of opportunity. We're going to break down exactly how this foundation is literally taking vulnerable kids off the streets and putting them right into the scholar seat.
Okay, let's dive into this. The sheer scale of this crisis is just staggering. We're talking 15 to 17 million. According to 2023 estimates from the Child Rights International Network, that is the estimated number of street-connected children in Nigeria today. I mean, that's not just a high number. That represents one of the absolute highest concentrations of street-connected kids anywhere in the entire world.
So how do we even get to a number like 15 to 17 million? Well, we really have to look at the massive systemic failures compounding this crisis. It's multi-layered. First off, we've got 13.2 million out-of-school children. To put that into perspective, that's about 15% of the entire world's out-of-school population. And beneath that, a staggering 87 million Nigerians are currently living below the poverty line. Now, you add to that the more than 2 million children displaced by armed conflict, like the decade-long Boko Haram insurgency in the Northeast, and you basically get this perfect storm of structural neglect, deep poverty, and ongoing conflict.
But here's the thing. When we're tossing around numbers in the millions, it is so incredibly easy to lose sight of the actual humans behind the data. Because behind every single one of these statistics is a real child with a name and unrealized potential.
And that brings us to a deeply emotional reality. Back in 2008, an educationist and IT professional named Sarah Adeniyi witnessed something that just changed everything for her. She saw this group of hungry, barefoot kids passing a single small pastry around among themselves. Every child took just the absolute tiniest bite, just to make sure every single mouth got a taste. Talk about a profound moment of solidarity in the middle of absolute deprivation, right? For Sarah, that was the exact moment she realized that just handing out a meal, charity alone, was never, ever going to be enough to fix this.
So that realization completely sparked a journey. Sarah went on to get an MSc in child and adolescent mental health, and that really confirmed for her that these children needed a sustainable, long-term solution. All of this culminated in the founding of the Street 2 Scholar, or S2S Foundation, in 2026. S2S was specifically built to deliver a coordinated long-term response tackling the actual root causes, poverty, trauma, and educational exclusion. And they didn't just stop there. They also set up these amazing sister hubs like iTech Global Consults and the iTech Empowerment Hub to bridge the digital skills gap and offer modern IT apprenticeships.
So how do they actually do this? Well, it all comes down to a really holistic framework. Let's look at the 5 core S2S pillars.
You see, S2S realized super early on that no single intervention works in a vacuum. I mean, you can't just put a traumatized, hungry kid in a classroom and expect them to magically thrive, right? So their entire model rests on these 5 interconnected pillars. First, Together focuses on finding a child's family and rebuilding that community support system. Then, Achieve handles the massive educational gap. Nurture takes care of the critical trauma-informed counseling and healthcare. Overcome provides the vocational training they need for real economic independence. And finally, Youth Leadership turns these kids into tomorrow's advocates. It's a totally comprehensive, evidence-based pathway right out of street life.
Let's actually zoom in on a couple of these pillars to see how they work on the ground, starting with the Achieve pillar. Imagine being out of school for years. That gap must feel totally insurmountable. S2S tackles this head-on with their accelerated learning program. They literally condense years of missed primary schooling into an intensive, months-long track to help kids catch up. And they make sure it actually works by totally removing the financial barriers. We're talking fully funded scholarships, textbooks, uniforms, the whole shebang. Plus, they integrate essential digital literacy training right from day one.
Now, what's really interesting about this next pillar, the Nurture pillar, is how it addresses a truly devastating reality. Life on the streets takes a massive psychological toll. Studies highlighted in the report show that anywhere from 10 to 37% of Nigerian adolescents are experiencing symptoms of depression or anxiety. But here's the kicker. Nigeria allocates only 4% of its health budget to mental health services. That's a huge void. So S2S steps directly into that gap, providing specialized, trauma-informed counseling, individual therapy, and group art therapy to actually heal those invisible psychological wounds.
Okay, let's move from the framework to the real world, because these pillars map directly onto some truly incredible real stories of hope.
First up, consider Umar. He's just 12 years old. Before S2S, his daily reality was begging for scraps of food on the noisy, incredibly busy streets of Kano.
But today, because of the Together pillar, he was safely reunited with his family. Through the Achieve pillar, he caught up on his reading and math. And thanks to the Overcome pillar, he's actually started a tailoring apprenticeship. This model literally gave Umar his curiosity back. He's no longer begging. He's dreaming of becoming a teacher himself. How amazing is that?
Next, we have 14-year-old Abibi. She was barely surviving in a super crowded market down in Lagos. And just for some context, Lagos is a city that has an estimated 100,000 children living on its streets alone. Abibi was just trying to get by selling small goods. But once S2S intervened, the Nurture pillar got her the critical healthcare and counseling she desperately needed. She started learning tailoring and computer skills, and beautifully, through the Youth Leadership pillar, she found her voice. She went from a kid in pure survival mode to a confident mentor for younger girls in her very own community.
And finally, let's look at 11-year-old Chike. His whole life in Onisha was defined by scavenging and just this profound daily anxiety over his own basic safety. But S2S helped him process that deep trauma through counseling. He was ultimately reunited with his family, and now he's learning carpentry and mechanics. Chike has evolved from an anxious, frightened little boy fighting to survive into a young leader who is contributing to his community with genuine purpose and pride.
Hearing those stories, it really makes you wonder what we can do to prevent a lost generation, right? Let's talk about how you can actually help.
Founder Sarah Adeniyi sums up the core philosophy of this whole foundation perfectly. She says, every child on Nigeria's streets is not a problem to be managed. They are a future waiting to be unlocked. I love that. It's really all about dignity. It's about recognizing that these children deserve the exact same chances as any other kid out there, the chance to move off the street and into the scholar's seat.
So how do we actually help unlock those futures? Well, the report lays out 3 very tangible steps you can take right now. First, donate. Your financial support goes directly to funding that family reunification, the accelerated learning, and the vital trauma counseling. Second, volunteer. If you've got skills as a teacher, a medical professional, a counselor, or an organizer, they desperately need you. And third, advocate. Share these kids' stories on social media, engage with your elected officials, and just raise awareness. Every single action you take absolutely multiplies their reach.
Literally millions of children are out there waiting. We've looked at the staggering data, we've walked through the evidence-based pillars, and we've heard the names of kids whose lives have been totally transformed. The S2S Foundation is doing the hard work on the ground, but they absolutely cannot do it alone. The crisis is immense, for sure, but the opportunity for real change is even bigger. So the question is, will you act or will you look away? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really encourage you to reflect on what your role can be in supporting these unseen lives.